The biggest risk to your privacy revealed. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for askleo.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure and hit the like button when you're done. That tells YouTube that you found some value in this video, and it helps other people find what they're looking for when they're searching on the world's second largest search engine, YouTube. So privacy is one of those things that I think a lot of people are very concerned about, and rightfully so. Unfortunately, I do think that there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstandings about exactly where risk comes from when it comes to privacy. A lot of people have written a lot of words about privacy, but in reality, I think it actually boils down to something significantly simpler than what a lot of people talk about. The biggest risk is people. It's not technology. The biggest risk are the people behind the technologies we use, the people we share our information with, and the people we communicate with. These are all people. As has been said many times about security, nothing can protect you from yourself. The same is true for privacy. You are at the mercy of all of the people with which you choose to share your information. Now, when I say that, people immediately start thinking about the big companies, right? Google is spying on you, and Microsoft doesn't have your best interests at heart, and you know, somebody cares about you. Facebook is watching you specifically. Again, it's not the companies, it's the people in those companies. And as I've said repeatedly, they just don't care about you as an individual. If there's anything going on, it's at the aggregate level where they're tracking millions of people that happen to do things like you do, because that's interesting information. If 1,000 people click on my article, I would like to know that. That you clicked on my article, honestly, I don't care. Sorry. It's that level of data that these big companies are collecting. Again, when people start thinking about the people at these companies, what they're concerned about then becomes the rogue employee, that guy in the data center, the guy that you see in all sorts of stock photography sitting with a hoodie and a keyboard, sitting in between a row of servers, right? He's in there hacking your information. Again, even he's not interested in you as an individual, and he doesn't exist. The fact is that the employees 99.99% of the time at all of these companies have been extremely well vetted. They don't have time to be looking at your private details. They've got a job to do. They're too busy keeping their servers running, their services running, and more. So these are not scenarios that I care about personally when it comes to my personal privacy. Another big target when we start talking about privacy is governments and government agencies. Now, this gets a little bit difficult to characterize with any sense of generality. And I say that because the answer can be dramatically different depending on where you live. I still say that for the most part, certainly in the Western world, your government really doesn't care that much about you as an individual, with an exception I'll talk about here in a minute. Unfortunately, that's not true everywhere. There are regimes, there are governments that actively spy on their citizenry. If you're in one of those situations, you already know that the government is watching you. And you probably have a sense that they are, and to what degree they are watching you, and what you can or cannot do in your situation. But for everyone else, and for the most part, I'm talking about, like I said, the Western world, United States, English-speaking countries, Europe, etc., chances are your government is not watching. They really don't care. They too have better things to do with their time and technology. Except, and this is where I've said, you're just not that interesting, except when you are. You might be interesting if you've broken the law, if you've done something illegal, if you have come onto the government's radar for some specific reason, then you as an individual might be interesting. And yes, then your privacy might be at risk, but it's at more risk anyway. It's not at risk because of what people are doing or what technologies you're using. It's at risk because you did something illegal, and the government now has a right to go in and actually access information that is otherwise inaccessible to everybody else. They can go to the court and get a subpoena, they can get a warrant, and they can access the information that you have stored online or elsewhere. That's something that you, in this case, as a criminal, need to be aware of. Now, I say as a criminal, of course, there are edge cases where the government overreaches, where the government does something they shouldn't do. There's a reason that the EFF and the ACLU exist. I totally get that. But for the most part, people that are in those situations understand the risks that they're taking. Sometimes they're taking them on purpose to change the laws. It's everybody else that's doing things explicitly and knowingly illegal that, yeah, you might be putting your personal privacy at risk. In reality, I think that our privacy is at greater risk from, I'll just call it policymakers. And this goes across both corporate and government institutions. The laws that are put in place, or the terms of services that we just sort of blindly agree to, are the kinds of things that put our personal information at greater risk than anything I've talked about so far. The fact that Facebook can share your information, the fact that you've posted something publicly, giving them control over what happens to it and who they show it to, and it's something that you've explicitly agreed to, actually puts more of your private information at risk than almost anything else we've talked about. The same is true for legislation. If your government puts into place legislation that allows backdoor spying or something like that, yep, that's something that could potentially eventually put your privacy at risk. However, everything I've talked about so far is still not the biggest risk to your privacy. The biggest risk to your privacy is you. It's what you choose to share and how you choose to share it. If you post something publicly, it is out of your control. It's gone. That is no longer private. Hopefully, you realize that when you post something privately or publicly. I kind of slipped there because I said when you post something privately. Guess what? You lose all control over it then too. You are trusting that the individual or organization that you have shared something with is going to keep it private. That's an assumption. That's an assumption that may be valid, it may be invalid, and it may be valid today and invalid tomorrow. You just don't know. This is where I see more people get into more trouble when it comes to their privacy. It's not the companies that they're doing business with. It's not the government regimes that they're living under. It's not even the technologies that they use. It's the amount of information that they willingly share, either publicly or with individuals, friends, family, acquaintances, that ultimately don't end up respecting their privacy, either intentionally or, in many cases, accidentally. The biggest risk to your privacy is what you choose to share and who you choose to share it with. Please, if you remember nothing else when it comes to privacy, remember that and use it to make informed decisions in the future. I hope this was helpful. I hope this spurred a little bit of thought. For related links, for updates, for comments, and more, visit askleo.com/27036. I'm Leo Notenboom. This is askleo.com. Thanks for watching.